regular meeting of the Annapolis City Council on Monday, February the 10th, 2020 will be called to order at 7:02 p.m. At this time, would everyone willing and able please stand for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone bow their heads, please? Dear God, help our words be true, help our actions be honest, help our lives to reflect your holiness and shine God's light for all to see. Help us to live with integrity. We thank you, God, for the opportunities to use the gifts that you have given us for your service today. Help us to do so in obedience, expecting nothing more than your well done as reward. And dear God, please give us the strength to go against the flow of this world. Help us to resist what is wrong in your eyes and to act in ways that please you for the glory of your name. Amen. The pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I may not be as good looking as the mayor, but this is all you got this evening. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Buckley. Alderwoman Tierney. Here. Alderman Payon.
Here.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles.
Here.
Alderman Finlayson.
Present.
Alderman Rodriguez. Alderman Gay.
Here.
Alderman Savage.
Present.
Alderman Arnett.
Present.
Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Yes. Yes, Madam Mayor. The next item is petitions, reports, approval of the agenda.
The next item is approval on the agenda. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended to add O-9-20 comprehensive bag reduction on first reader, R-12-12 comprehensive bag reduction fines on first reader, and R-11-10 World Migratory Bird Day resolution on first reader. May I hear a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have two other changes I'd like to make.
Yes, Alderman Arnett.
I'd like to remove from the consent calendar.
It's not time to do that yet. It's not time to do that yet.
Pardon me?
We're not on the consent calendar yet.
Oh, so we don't do that when we're amending the agenda? All right, never mind.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. None hearing. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Now, the next item on the agenda is petitions, reports, and communications, beginning with update from the mayor.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight to participate in your government and our government. I want to remind you that city offices will be closed next Monday, February 17th, in observance of President's Day. The Pip Moy Recreation Center will remain open and your refuse pickup schedule will remain the same. Over the past few weeks, I've had the honor of serving as acting mayor of our city, our wonderful city. And while that responsibility has been temporary, it has been very rewarding. On Friday, I was honored to swear in 6 of our new firefighters at a ceremony here in council chambers. As they move into their careers as sworn civil servants of our city, it was wonderful to see members of their family and their new family, the Annapolis Fire Department, celebrate the start of their careers. I want to acknowledge something that we all were privileged to see at that swearing in. We saw a public safety team, TEAM. Not only was the Annapolis Fire Department's command staff present, but also Police Chief Edward Jackson and the Office of Emergency Management stepped forward to show their support. Public safety is a priority for this city, and I am so happy to see that the team that Mayor Buckley appointed and we as council members confirmed are working together for the people of our beautiful city. I've also been able to attend ribbon cuttings, including one for a new business on Dock Street, Biddy and Bowes, that employs individuals with developmental disabilities. I wish them much success. It was an amazing turnout on Saturday, several hundred people, and that shows me our city has a big heart. It was so good to see business entrusting their future to Annapolis, but it was also good to see Annapolis showing up to embrace a model for business that is all about inclusivity. It's Black History Month, and I hope that you all are tuning in to our social media pages to see a little information each day about people and events from our timeline of Black history right here in our city. This Thursday at 7 p.m. at St. John Newman Church on Bestgate Road, former State Senator Gerald Weingrad will be presenting a program, Searching for the Soul of Annapolis, a program on growing up in a segregated Annapolis from the 1940s to the 1960s. As Senator Weingrad says about his program, quote, "Hear how soul music helps soothe the wounded soul of Annapolis and break down racial barriers," unquote. Toward the end of the month, we will be dedicating the police station on Taylor Avenue to our first African-American police chief, Joseph S. Johnson. Chief Johnson grew up in Annapolis and began his career with the Baltimore Police Department in 1968, working his way up through the ranks to a colonel. He retired from the Baltimore City Police Department in 1991 to come back to Annapolis. In 1994, he became the first African-American chief of police for the Annapolis Police Department. During his tenure, he increased the number of women and minority officers in the Annapolis Police Department. He brought stability and professionalism to the department and oversaw upgrades to the communications of parole officers, among other achievements. There will be a reception on February 27th at 4 p.m. at the Banneker Douglas Museum on Franklin Street. If you would like to attend, please contact the mayor's office to RSVP by February 14th. For the final piece of tonight's remarks, I'd like to read a letter from an 11-year-old Annapolis resident who took the time to let us know his thoughts on Truxtun Park. Quote, "Dear Mayor Buckley, it has come to my concern that the Truxtun Park skate park isn't that great. I'm Owen Beeler, an 11-year-old skateboarder who lives in Annapolis and uses the park frequently. I think that the park is way too small. Why is this a problem? Well, when people use it, it gets crowded really fast. So when someone does a trick, people are all around and you and or others could get really hurt. I understand that you will probably get hurt skating in general, but it increases the chance. Also, due to the size, the people who made it couldn't fit much in the park. There are 2 ramps, a back-to-back bank, a box, and a transition piece. Compared to other parks, that is not much. Another thing is that people that live in Annapolis usually travel as far as Baltimore to get to a decent skate park. There are parks such as Lansdowne, Walker Mill, Bowie, Laurel, Charm City Skate, Hamden, and many more. The point of this email is to ask if the city of Annapolis could possibly either put in a new park along with Truxtun or add to Truxtun. Making a new park will get many people to come because of the fact that it's new. If you add to Truxtun, there will be more space and more people at a time can go in. Take a look at the skate parks I named to base the expansion or addition on. The skate community, including me, would really appreciate it if you could plan on getting a new park or expanding on Truxtun. I speak for my voice and many others. P.S. In your spare time, if you get some, watch me skate on YouTube at SOMEBOARDS. PPS. I would be willing to help with the plans such as where to build and what to build. Your concerned skater, Owen Beeler. And I will pass this along to Mr. Archie Trader, who is the director of our Rec and Parks. Thank you, Owen. We are here to listen to our constituents, even our 11-year-old ones. As a final note, I'd like for us to take time for a moment of silence for Ms. Tanya Downs, who worked in finance for the city of Annapolis. She passed away suddenly week before last. Her service last week at Mount Olive AME Church was well attended by her friends, family, and colleagues. Tanya always had a big smile, and she made a difference in the lives of the people all around her. I knew her very personally. She was a light. I know that her friends, family, and coworkers are going to miss her greatly, especially her sister Tracy and her son Brian. Rest in peace, Tanya. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. Also tonight, I would like for us to take a moment out for Mayor Buckley's mother, Pauline Brosnan, who passed away last week after a battle with cancer. Mayor Buckley is overseas in Australia and preparing for her memorial, which is tomorrow in Fremantle. Ms. Pauline came to Annapolis, and many of us got to meet her during the inauguration. I know this is a very difficult time for our mayor, his wife, and his 2 sons, as well as Ms. Pauline's husband, sister, and other family members. Please hold them in your thoughts. There's a registry book in the lobby of City Hall, and if you would like to offer your condolences, I know that that would mean a lot to the family and to our mayor. Let's take a moment to pray for our dearly departed, Pauline, and to wish safe travels for our mayor, who will be back expected later this week. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Now let's get on with tonight's meeting and agenda. Okay.
Reports by
Okay.
reports by committees.
Okay. The next item, thank you. The next item on the agenda is reports by committees. Send all the person who would like to present a report. From the Public Safety Committee, our next meeting is Monday, scheduled for Monday, March 2nd, 2020 at 4 p.m. here in Council Chambers. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor, comments by the general public?
During comments by the public may speak on any item not scheduled for public hearing tonight. Legislation scheduled for public hearing tonight is O-3-20 Fire Prevention Code. Would our first 3 speakers come up to the sign-in sheet to the podium, please? And that would be Mr. Paul Bollinger from CRAB, Ms. Mary Byro, and Mr. or Ms. Chris Cole.
As a reminder, Madam Mayor, the speakers are limited to 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Please state your name and your address for the record, and the timer is set at the right.
Madam Mayor, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
My name is Paul Bollinger. I'm the Executive Director for Chesapeake Region Accessible Boating. I live at 1109 Miami Avenue in Eastport. I'm here to let you know that while we don't have to provide a report to City Council until next year when our lease is signed for the Adaptive Boating Center, I wanted to let you know some of the good news that happened this year. CRAB was able to take out 1,019 guests this year to teach sailing. 60% of them with a disability, the other 40% were family members and caregivers. These individuals predominantly came from 27 different organizations represented in the region who represent people with disabilities, inclusive of the Annapolis school system, who brought a group out. We're very excited about the coming year. I wish I was telling you that we were breaking ground on the Adaptive Boating Center in the next couple of months, but right now it's been 5.5 months that DNR has had the city's application for program open space grant money. And we are working, and I will be meeting with Secretary Jeannie Riccio on Thursday to discuss our concern about the delay in the review process. But in closing, in keeping with the 3 minutes, I wanted to let the City Council know that Chesapeake Region Accessible Boating was awarded U.S. Sailing's Robbie Pierce Award for the Outstanding Adaptive Sailing Program in the United States.
Congratulations.
So, this award was presented to us last Thursday on the deck of the USS Midway in San Diego in front of about 300 sailing leaders and organizations around the country. So we take this with a great deal of pride and also emphasis that the investment that the city, the county, and the state has made in the Adaptive Boating Center is going to an organization that is going to represent the city exceptionally well, not just here, but around the entire United States. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paul. I have one comment, Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul? One comment. I attended the ribbon cutting for Biddy and Bose. I can think of 26 young people who would love to come out sailing. The young people, and Alderwoman Tierney was there as well. I'm sure those new employees would love to come out and experience a time on the water. So you might want to go down sometime soon and make yourself available and let them know.
For a free cup of coffee, I'll do anything. That sounds great. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next is Mary Byro. Okay, I don't see Mary. Next is Chris Cole.
Hello again. My name is Chris Cole at 55 East. I feel like we're becoming old friends on short-term rentals. So I'm here tonight to ask for your support of R1020, which would enact a temporary moratorium on issuing of new STR licenses. There's nothing in this resolution that undoes any of the regulations that you passed recently in 2619. All it does is hit a pause on growth, and this gives the city an opportunity to determine its current inventory. Planning and zoning has a list of issued short-term rental licenses. You can already map the rule followers. Platform accountability was not part of the enforcement language passed last month, which means the city can use a service like Host Compliance to determine the full inventory of STRs already offered online, regardless of licensing status. This will give you density. Inspections will proceed because R1020 allows currently licensed STRs to continue operating, which also means these owners will be able to renew their licenses during the pause. High demand times like commissioning week and the boat shows aren't impacted by the moratorium because these peak periods are already exempted from licensing requirements. The city ultimately benefits because a baseline inventory would be completed during this time and density control ideas evaluated without the pressure to just push something through. Planning and zoning benefits because there will be time to nail down inspection and enforcement requirements. Future STR operators benefit because the city's position on STR growth and density will be as crystal clear as its expectations for inspections and occupancy tax remittance. And the neighborhood residents will benefit because passing R1020 sends a clear signal that you heard our concerns and that your commitment to 2619's passage as only the beginning was sincere. Please support R1020, and thank you for letting me address you tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. Next three persons, Dr. Susan Margulies, Ms. Janet McCallum, and Mr. or Ms. Tracy Tischer.
Hello, Annapolis City Council. My name is Susan Margulies. I live at 113 Conduit Street. I'm here today to speak about the Anne Arundel County short-term rental legislation 8919 that's coming to a final vote on February 18th. The bill is now in its final form, and it is a beautiful piece of short-term rental legislation for little Airbnbs for the people that rent rooms in their homes. It is perfect from the definition of a short-term rental, which excludes Craigslist and housemates, to a simple and friendly registration-only process with only two requirements: proof of short-term rental insurance and the host certification under oath to code compliance. And on February 18th, there will be a discrepancy between how short-term rentals are handled on the north side of Weems Creek and the south side of Weems Creek. Because on the north side of Weems Creek, if you unexpectedly lose your job, which can happen, or there's a government shutdown, the same house on the north side of Weems Creek will be able to fill out a form on a Tuesday and be short-term renting by the weekend. They will have immediate access to their house, the guest room in their house, as a financial resource. But the city in 02619 blocks you from accessing your house as a financial resource for 6 weeks. And you risk a fine of $100 a day if you attempt to do so, because it takes 6 weeks to get a home inspection. So there are about 8 of us here today who are coming to ask you on February 18th, when the county bill passes, we would like you to take this legislation and do this for us. And if you find in your hearts, if you think you've made a mistake in 02619 in how the little Airbnbs in every ward, we have a letter signed by all of us from wards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we have copies of the short-term rental legislation from the county with the pieces highlighted that we want. And if in your heart you think you've made a mistake with 02619, this is the solution right here for primary resident hosts. For primary resident hosts only. This is what we want you to do. It's cost effective to the city. It will save you money. It will save you time. And if you have projects in your own wards that require money, this kind of legislation will be able to divert your funds directly into those projects. And the last thing I want to say is that we're opposed to the moratorium because little Airbnbs couldn't get licensed before January 13th. You couldn't get a license to have a room in your home. So I'm just handing these over to you.
What's the number on that piece of legislation, Dr. Margulies?
What was this?
What's the number on that piece of legislation? The county?
8919, and I'll send it to you digitally as well. But here's the hard copy with everything highlighted that we want, and also the letter signed by all of us. Thank you very much, as always.
Thank you.
For your attention.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Tracy Tischer, and I am an Airbnb super hostess. I live at 504 Riverview Court in Annapolis. As a lifelong resident of Annapolis, I testified in June 2019 because I was so concerned and confused by the bill's licensing procedures. At that time, I was fortunate to extend my hours at one of my other 2 jobs and chose to delist my home from Airbnb. In the past 2 weeks, I have learned that since my address is on the north side of Weems Creek in Annapolis, I am governed by Anne Arundel County Law 8919. Because my home is outside the city limits and in the county, I am most grateful for that easy, friendly registration process that is available to me at the county level. And I can choose to relist my home on Airbnb at any time. Having this easy access to the use of my home as a financial resource is a huge relief to me. I only wish that the Annapolis City Council could and would show the same respect and consideration to my friends, neighbors, and fellow permanent residents in the city of Annapolis, such that they have the same registration process as the one available to me in 8919. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Janet McCallum. I'm in Ward 1, 116 Granada Avenue. I would like to, first of all, just second the same 2 comments that were made concerning the reasonableness of the Anne Arundel County bill to for the concerns of short-term rentals. I also would like to second bring up the obvious need for revision or a proposed revision and moratorium, and would hope that those of us with bookings already for this coming year will not have to call Airbnb and stop those listings. Third, I would hope that the legislation adjustments would differentiate between whole home non-occupied homes that are rent versus what we're calling ourselves the little Airbnbs. If you look at, according to my calculations, there are about 500 units advertised in the two larger short-term platforms, Airbnb and VROB. 500's a big number, but if you look through those numbers again, which I have done, there are about 100 that are non-occupied homes, and sometimes those homes that are being rented are, the owner is not even from Annapolis. I would venture, too, that the problems that initiated any consideration of city legislation were probably more likely to have come from those homes where renters were there without any owner supervision. I bet you could check even in police records that very few calls were ever made to private homes where maybe one or two renters were in a owner-occupied home, no more than I would expect that there would be problems in a hotel room. But when you get maybe even 12 people in a home that is not owner-occupied, you would stand the chance of potentially causing more problems for the neighborhood. I don't want to throw that grouping under the bus, and yet I would hope that when you consider legislation, that you would consider that there are two types of Airbnb or VROB, the people that live in their homes and rent one room versus those that are not. And then again, to make things even more off balance, more inequitable, the owners who vacate their home for commissioning week are, what I've been told, exempt from any regulation. And so it depends, there's a differentiation as to what time of the year you're vacating your home and leaving it to other people.
Excuse me, Ms. McCallum, do you have your comments in writing? Because we would definitely can take that.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I believe the 3 minutes.
Three's up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Certainly.
Ms. Byro, I saw you come in. Your name was called. That's all right. Ms. McCallum, if that's the only copy you have, we can certainly make a copy and give you a copy, or we'll take the original. Yes, ma'am.
May I? Are we ready?
Hold on one second, Ms. Byro.
Sure. Oh, no problem. It's quite all right.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Thank you, Ms. Byro. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Mary Byro. My address is 280 Hilltop Lane, Unit J, Annapolis, Maryland, 21403, if you want to send Christmas cards. It's a joke. I wanted to talk about homelessness in Annapolis because I've learned some things. So I wrote this in about 2017, and I've updated it. And I'm going to read you what I wrote, and I'm going to show you a piece of art. And this piece of art was done by a man who used to be homeless, and one woman befriended him and changed his life. And there's a movie that was written about that friendship, and I'll tell you about it.
Ms. Bauer, just want to remind you, I know you like to give us a lot of information, but if you have something in writing, we can get Ms. Green to.
I do have that.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
I'd
And
like-
once we get to the 3-minute, we'll get Ms.
Yes,
Green to make a
that's fine.
copy.
Thank you.
And that can also anyone else who would like for us to make a copy of their testimony, we can certainly do that as well. Excuse for the interruption.
Sure, I tried to time it. And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Also, a quote, defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. And this is the part I wrote. The other part was from the Bible. Be a friend on a long-term basis to someone who is currently homeless. This does not always mean offering money or food, but it likely will include that. The first elderly homeless lady I met in Annapolis became a friend of 15 years until she died. While I was not a perfect friend, Miss Virginia had a huge impact on my life and vice versa. Sadly, it evidently is so rare for hospitals, social services, police, etc., to see unpaid individuals step up to help the homeless that people repeatedly wondered why I'm helping this elderly woman, and that was 28 years ago. I was just being what's referred to as a good Samaritan. Sadly, the church has too often abdicated its role and points the needy to social service agencies, nonprofits. In Annapolis, that means Lighthouse Shelter, which is no longer run by churches, and We Care and Friends, both overburdened, versus getting up close and personal with them like Jesus did. While I am not saying we should totally ignore working with those groups, we should not forget our biblical examples. There's more, and I'm going to give you the copies, but I've said this over and over, and I'm going to keep saying it because the need is increasing. We have veterans, we have elderly people, and if we want to start encouraging some of the really troubled youth in our town, let's take care of their grandfathers who maybe lived under Jim Crow, maybe didn't have as many opportunities as my grandfather did. I've seen amazing encouragement to young guys when they see my care for elderly, suffering, poor men.
Thank you, Ms. Byro. Ms. Green, could you please make a copy of Ms. Byro's testimony? Okay, thank you so much.
There was something else I wanted to talk about. Am I allowed to do 3 minutes on something else?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank
Okay,
you.
we'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
See you up there.
All right. Next group of speakers is Mr. Joseph Stern, Ms. Lauren Wishart, and Mr. Brian Mungs.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Joe Stern, 919 Wells Avenue, over in Eastport. The reason that I'd like to address the council tonight is to talk a little bit about the small Airbnbs. My wife and I have renovated our basement. We have not applied for a permit yet, but we would like to be able to offer our home to folks out on Airbnb. The one thing that I keep hearing about is the home inspections that are done with the city, and if that's what we need to do, that's what we'll absolutely do. But the other thing that we would like to let everybody know is that we live there with our 3 dogs, 2 cats. We are on the premises, and would never do anything to go ahead and put anybody in danger, because that's my family that's going to be there in the home with these with somebody that we would take in through Airbnb or VRBO. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much, sir. Ms. Lauren Wishart.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Lauren Wishart. I live at 32 Monroe Court in Ward 1. I am a primary resident, owner-operated superhost of a small Airbnb. I rent primarily to Naval Academy. I am a proud Navy mom. My son is a 2007 grad. We have been sponsor parents as well, and we have opened our home during mostly football games, commissioning week, and the like, and feel very strongly that as somebody who lives in my home, that we should be exempt from the city's ordinance that they have chosen, the things that they have chosen to do, and that you would adopt the county's legislation 8919. We are not making a lot of money on this. I have used this money to help put my son, I have a 23-year-old son, through college, and this has been a benefit for myself, for the rest of us that are standing here with me, and for our community. We feel like we are offering, not everybody can afford to live or to stay in the hotels in Annapolis, and we are offering a service that is more hospitable to our neighbors and to those that come to visit. And I just would urge you to please consider this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bryan?
Good evening. My name is Brian Mong.
Good evening, sir.
I live in Annapolis, Maryland, on Smith Avenue. And I'm a 65-year-old retired widower who has been a resident of Annapolis for 28 years. I live with my daughter in a Ward 1 single-family home that I previously rented as a long-term rental. I now rent out my daughter's basement studio while she's away at college, so this makes me an STR. And this is a new thing for me. It's a source of income, and all of a sudden I feel like this opportunity to rent it out is really is just slipping through my hands as I try to go through some of the registration processes and the permitting process. I have done some, renovations in my home, and I went through all the city permits and I got all that registered, and I have those on file. I also had my house lead remediated, and that's also, part of my file. So I feel I have all the requirements to pass in that area. And so that's why I've been following this whole idea here. The owner-occupied STRs is a cottage industry in Annapolis with a historical precedent. It's those of us who have lived here in Annapolis, who've been renting out our homes all these years to the Naval Academy, to the parents and families of the Naval Academy, as well as to the United States Boat Show. And so I think those people should be considered in the same block, under the same umbrella as those two institutions, because we are what make those two institutions work. It's been those houses, those families, and all the people that you've seen here today. We are the one who have been there to serve those two institutions. One's a federally run government institution, and the other one is a private corporation. It doesn't look good to show privilege necessarily towards those institutions. And in fact, one could actually say, well, you're discriminating. You're using you're giving privilege to these institutions, but then you're not giving it to other people. So as a resolution to that, I would suggest that you consider including under the umbrella of the Naval Academy and under and the U.S. boat shows, the short-term STRs that are owner-occupied, that have been here in Annapolis, that can show their that they've paid their tax returns, and exclude them from having to go through these rigorous processes, because it does produce a financial burden onto them. So with that, I just want to say that I'm opposed to the moratorium in the sense that, line 13 here, it says, whereas the city has recognized that indefinitely deferring review of applications for approval of licenses for a new short-term rental could result in a hardship to some applicants, we are the applicants.
Yes, sir.
We are the ones that are going to suffer from that. So I would amend to trying to include us in some way and exempt us from that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe Alderman Gay has a question.
No, my question is for Sally, actually.
Mr. Mons?
It's for Sally, actually.
I'm sorry.
For Sally, actually.
For Dr. Nash?
Yeah.
I think that's out of order. Alderman
In
Gay,
regards to this topic,
we're going to finish with the public hearing. I believe that's what our city attorney is advising us. Thank you. Dr. Nash isn't going anywhere. Next, we have Mr. Will Small, Miss Ashley Love, and Nushi Carrera. I'm sorry if I butchered the name.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Small.
Mayor, acting mayor, and the council. Well, my name is William Small, 702 Melrose Street, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the short-term rental little Airbnbs, as I am one of them, and encourage you all to pass the county's 08919 to relieve hosts like myself of the discrepancy where there is really no path forward to get a license for me, apparently, because I've been waiting for a license since October, and I would certainly hope that I opposed the moratorium on the basis that I'm still waiting, and I'm doing everything I can to follow process, and I'm unable to legally operate my home, my personal residence, as providing housing for, like, my housemate Rob, who has 2 kids. They come every weekend and they say it's the best place they ever lived. Well, if 2619 were enforced, I would have to pay $100 a day or whatever because I have a housemate. Well, how about my housemate Justin? He got kicked out of a halfway house and found himself at my place successful. So am I just supposed to, like, put these people out because you guys made this law that didn't factor in or didn't listen to me, didn't want to hear my concerns? I've got a couple staying with me that is looking to move into the area, and they're going to be here for like 10 days, and it's affordable. I guess you guys would have them stay at a hotel and presumably pay at least 3 or 4 times more. And really, it's because I haven't been able to get a license that I already applied for long ago. So I encourage you all to repair the lack of accommodation for circumstances such as these in your 02619 before you go passing a moratorium, so that I can actually get the license that I already applied for and paid for, and can continue to operate my home and provide housing for these people that need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Small. Ms. Love.
Good evening. Yes, I'm Ashley Love.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Love. Okay. Hill Street?
Yes, 14 Hill Street in President's Hill.
Thank you.
I have been living in Annapolis as a renter for the last 11 years, but I recently became a homeowner. And in the past, I've traveled the world staying with friends, friends of friends, or the next best thing when you don't have a friend of a friend, something like a Airbnb or a VRBO. And I've experienced incredible cities because of the locals who live there telling me all of the local things that make their place unique. And I would like to be one of those hosts and become one of those people to give back that karma that I've been so fortunate to experience. I've learned in living here for the past 11 years that Annapolis's history surrounds this opening up of your home to people coming from outside of town for things like commissioning week before any hotels lived here. So I feel like the little Airbnb should be distinguished from the second and third and fourth homeowners that are investing in homes and not even living there, because it does speak to our history as a city. It speaks to our locals helping visitors really get the local experience, and makes it very simple. Passing the county bill for the little Airbnbs will make make people able to do this. So thank you very much.
Very much. Ms. Carrera?
Good evening, Council. I wanted to give you two requests, please. As a taxpayer, resident, owner of two homes in Ward 8, and neighbor to Alderman Gay, just wanted to say, if you could please, as our other residents have requested, that you would align our with Anne Arundel County 8919 for small Airbnb. We live in our own homes. We care about homes. We care about safety. So we can go ahead, if you can align that, it would make it much easier from an administrative point of view, from a regulation compliance point of view, and being able to continue to get all the income tax from us, property taxes, and all the proper fees and funds that you're currently getting and will continue to get. I also have a long-term rental home up the street on Jefferson Street. I live on Wells Avenue. And that home, we have been renting it out since we built our house on Wells Avenue, and is 9 houses away. For 11 years, we have 9 years, we have provided a home to families, 3 families. Our current resident is going to be renewing for 5th year staying in our home. They continuously thank us for let them live in our own home. So I think we're a perfect example of somebody who did not choose to use their home as a primary short-term rental for our secondary home. We probably make $1,500 to $2,000 a month less by going to long-term rentals. However, we do believe we moved here from Montgomery County, a huge suburb with great schools. And after our kids went to college, and one happened to be a midshipman at Naval Academy and served for 7 years in the Navy. And we have actually commissioned and graduated 23 additional midshipmen in the past 11 years. So my connection is to Naval Academy. We have about 5,000 really close friends who would love to come and see their kids who have given up a lot of freedom and attend a university, which is not a college, to be here and then end up serving in the U.S. Marine Corps and the Navy. And these families, when they stay with us, I would say 99% of our guests are from Naval Academy because of my connection to the Naval Academy. And they literally cried when they saw when the bill passed and what that meant to them. And they were terrified that they would not be able to find housing. I'm all for data. I'm all for understanding how big or how small can this problem be. But I don't know how you're going to really acquire the data. As it was mentioned earlier, full homes and small VRBOs, and mine happens to be an apartment in the basement with separate unit. They all are different categories. And I don't think by law, those software companies, Verbo and Airbnb, can give you detailed information. So I'm all for Mr. Savage doing the right thing, but I think you should have started it last spring, collecting data to know how big this problem was. I think you don't just pass a law and then tell the people you no longer can have guests. I already have my house booked for maybe 20 nights in the next 6 months. And what am I supposed to do? Send them cancellation and lose my super host status? This is a very difficult situation.
Yes,
You're
ma'am.
Really impacting people.
Thank you. Could you give your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Farinoush Nushi Carrera, 909 Wells Avenue, Annapolis, and 416 Jefferson Street, Annapolis.
Thank you, ma'am.
1403. Thank you.
Our next 3 speakers are Ms. Ursula Kuhn, Ms. Julia Clark, and Mr. Paul Ford.
Good evening, Acting Mayor and Council.
Good evening, ma'am.
My name is Ursula Kuhn. I live at 1515 Ritchie Lane in Annapolis. I just have a few one point and one question that I'd like to ask. I've talked to a lot of other little Airbnbers recently. It seems to be something that's brought up a lot when people see me, and because of all this legislation. And we've all kind of agreed that if this kind of goes through the way it is right now, we'll delist our Airbnb and we'll just get our homes ready to work the boat shows and the commissioning week. That wouldn't be a big thing for me. I'd make more money, and I wouldn't have to deal with any of the legislation. However, there's one thing that people have asked me, and I also wonder, and that is under the exemption of the boat shows and the commissioning week, there is this other event as specified by resolution of City Council. What does that mean?
Questions inappropriate for the council?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
This is a public hearing, ma'am, and questions aren't appropriate for the council. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And you
well,
can certainly submit them.
It is in the bill, and it's very ambiguous. And, you know, if we want to get our homes ready for commissioning week and for the boat shows, we'd really like to know what that particular part of the bill means so that we can provide housing for that particular thing. Anyway, that's really all I have to say. I'd love to concede my time, rest of my time to my next speaker, if that's capable here.
I don't think so.
That's what I thought. Anyway, thank you.
But
By the way,
we aim to please.
Give the mayor my dearest condolences.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Julia Clark.
Good evening.
I live at 1289 Virginia Street in
Yes, ma'am.
Annapolis, in the Homewood area. I'm in Ward 2. And I am here with our little Airbnb group to ask that the city adopt the County Bill 89-19 for short-term rentals, and that we model the city after what the county is doing on February 18th. The county has the two-step process. We have to prove that we have short-term rental insurance, and then we do a self-certification that we are code compliant. That's it, a two-step process for the little Airbnbs, meaning those of us that are primary residents renting rooms in our house. And we would like to be distinguished from non-resident investors and non-resident renters that are also being regulated by these laws. I feel that the intent of the city was and is to maintain a neighborhood feel, to prevent the non-resident investors scooping up these properties and using them as rentals, and to keep the city affordable, and not have the non-resident investors increasing prices by scooping up the properties. And I don't think that the current legislation is satisfying the intent of what the city wanted to do. As little Airbnbs, we are maintaining a neighborhood feel because we are living on our properties. We're simply renting rooms. And we are keeping the city affordable for travelers, for people that are considering moving here, for people that have secure jobs here and they're looking for something to purchase or rent long-term, and for tourists. And the city benefits from that. They come here, they spend money in the city. We're providing a service to the city, having our rooms for rent. As the others have spoken to, almost all of the renters that I've had have been associated with the Naval Academy, and we form relationships and have repeat renters with these families who begin as early as induction weekend, and we might have them for certain weekends and events year after year until commissioning week. We form bonds with these renters, and we provide a service. Me personally, this is my second home in Annapolis, and the first one I had was in Admiral Heights, right near the stadium, and I'm still within walking distance of the stadium, and so many of the activities are related to the Navy and the stadium. And that is a service to the city. I also want to reiterate what another speaker said, and that is the last thing is that housing money in the budget for the city would be better spent on other areas rather than licensing and regulating and an arduous process that putting us through people that just rent rooms in their house, putting us through an arduous process. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clark, you're at 1289 Virginia Street?
Yes.
I think you're in Ward 3.
I'm at the other Virginia, right by Ceremony Coffee Roaster.
Okay.
There's
all
two
right.
Virginias.
Okay.
So no, I'm in Ward
thank
2.
you, because I didn't know that. Thank you
there's
so
a
much.
There's a little teeny Virginia that's only about 6 houses behind Ceremony.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Foyer?
Good evening, public.
Good evening,
and
sir.
private citizens. And acting mayor, I think you're doing a terrific job. Maybe you deserve to stay in that seat a long time.
I'm in a good seat right there.
Okay. Paul 4, 921 Boucher Avenue. Have a number of very quick, pointed remarks. Shouldn't surprise anyone. Today is National Flannel Day. I learned on WRNR. This is the close I could come up with. The moratorium 08919, 2 issues very much related. I strongly urge you to consider what our neighbors of the county are doing, like so many others have said tonight. It's what I urged you to do repeatedly here over the summer and fall and winter. Create a tiered system that really looks at the big differences, qualitative and quantitative, between the short-term renters who own and occupy and the outside investors. Big difference. If you're going to pass a moratorium, keep it short. Do it for a reason. Come up with a plan. Use the time wisely with a set of goals. Otherwise, you're wasting a lot of time and energy for no good reason. I want to compare the county and the city on another thing I brought up a few weeks ago. Very, very similar thing. If you put a solar panel up on your roof in Annapolis, it takes 2 months to get a permit. If you do it in the county, it takes 2 days. I think it has something to do with the angle of the sun. The apparent angle of the sun, when it passes over the county, hits roofs differently, and roofs are made differently. And in such a way that astronomically it makes it very easy for the county government to pass the permit in 2 days, whereas here the sunlight isn't quite shining the same and it takes 2 weeks. That's why the county's passing such an intelligent law. We hope they're going to pass it regarding short-term rentals, whereas the city has passed an unintelligible and unintelligent law. I'd also like to make a couple of quick points here about a particular alderman that is not here tonight. And of all the city council meetings I've come to, that alderman is not here. I'd like someone in the city government to take a look at what city code says about that. Shouldn't there be some action taken to compel that alderman to attend? Second, there's another alderman here tonight, happens to be out at this moment. That alderman and any other alderperson, alderwoman, alderman who has a relationship with the hospitality industry or may own and operate a hotel or bed and breakfast, would that person be recused from the upcoming discussion and vote directly related, again, the moratorium to short-term rentals? I think that needs to be discussed. It's an ethics issue. Finally, my Alderman Arnett, today, in a note to myself and all the other people in his ward, referred to short-term rentals as the dreaded short-term vacation rental. I don't know what he meant by that. Maybe he was joking. I didn't think it was very funny. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Foyer. If there's anyone else present who would like to speak, please come forward at this time. Yes, Ms. Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer
Hi.
Balducci, 31 Glen Avenue. I am here tonight to speak in support of Sally Nash. I am a small business owner, and my business happens to be on Forest Drive. I'm also president of SOFO, our business association for Forest Drive, and I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with Sally Nash on the Eastport Forest Drive sector study for about 2 years. And I just wanted to say that I hope you guys confirm her tonight. She's an asset to the city. She's intelligent. She is calm. She is thoughtful. She does her best for the city. She knows the city in and out. and she's been a joy and a pleasure to work with for all of us. So we just wanted to make sure, I worked 12 hours today to be here to make sure that SOFO gave our support to Sally Nash, and I hope you guys all confirm her tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jennifer. Did you state your address? I'm sorry if you did.
31 Glen Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Good
Mr.
evening,
Mariano, thank
Madam
you.
Mayor, members of the council. Bruce Bariano, 191 Duke of Gloucester Street here in Annapolis. I'm here on behalf of my client Expedia. Very briefly, you passed a bill with a lot of work and effort, a lot of sincere work and effort by members of this council. It's a good beginning. It's a beginning. I think it's unfortunate, respectfully, for a bill to immediately go in when the other one hasn't even started to stop things. And I think it's counterproductive. Very respectfully, it will make the council look foolish. Here they spent all this work and effort, 7-1, I believe it was, voting in favor of the legislation. And while it's permissible and it's his prerogative to then introduce a resolution to bring a halt to things is it's just, I think the public is going to think that the council just doesn't know what it's doing. And the council does know what it's doing. It's worked very long and hard on this matter. Give it a try. It's a beginning. Start getting your arms around this and learning what actual residences are being used in this capacity and go from there. So I would urge at the point in time, I know it's premature, but at the point in time that this resolution not be passed, not be enacted, and that the energy and the attention of the council and the city should be the implementation of the legislation that was just passed. I mean, I just needed to say that, not disrespecting anyone, but I really support what the council did sincerely with a lot of work and effort, and it should be given a chance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Barrion.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
My name is Dina Potter, and I actually live in the county. My address is 567 Francis Nicholson Way, and I am a soon-to-be Airbnb host. As I was trying to decide whether I wanted to be an Airbnb host, I started doing some research, and I actually reached out to someone in the group that you've been hearing from because I was so confused until I realized I'm in the county. Yay! I don't have to go through all this stuff that is creating a situation where had I been in the city, I probably wouldn't have gone through with becoming a host. And I'm looking to do so because, first of all, I have a vacation coming up beginning of March, and I'm going, and it's not really a vacation, I'm going back to Guatemala where my grandmother is to take care of her for a week. And during that time, I wanted to be able to make a little bit of extra money to be able to provide for her care. A lot of people, and I think this country was built on small, and it continues to survive because of small business owners. And a lot of people are looking for ways to be able to make extra money nowadays. And it saddens me that my neighbors across the way are not going to be able to do so because of laws that are impeding them from being able to host families or friends that may be wanting to use Airbnb as a way to be able to explore Annapolis or just come see family, graduate from the academy, or visit the boat show. That's all for me.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Seeing no motion in chambers, I declare comments by the general public closed. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Yes, Madam Acting Mayor, there's a Next item on the agenda is yes, Madam Acting Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent calendar.
Yes, Alderwoman Finlayson.
I would like to remove R 520 from the consent calendar.
Oh, okay. University of Maryland, Baltimore?
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Alderman Arnett?
Yes. Madam Mayor, I would like to remove 0720 designated loading zones and also R1020.
Okay. Designated loading zone and moratorium on issuance of short-term rental license? Yes, sir. Anyone else on the dais? We'll make a motion to approve
Move
the
approval
consent
of this-
calendar.
Move approval of the consent calendar as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Roll call.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll begin with Alderman's. Oh,
Acting Mayor Pendell Charles,
aye.
Alderman Savage,
Aye.
Alderman Arnett,
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney,
Aye.
Alderman Payon,
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson,
Aye.
Alderman Gay,
Say aye.
Sorry, I think I got corridor of that.
oh,
Okay. Is it my
Consent
question?
calendar.
consent calendar.
Vote on the consent.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Can I ask a question, Sal, before we go?
Not on this. We didn't get to her yet.
It's not about you.
We're on the consent calendar. There's no talking. It just gets adopted on one vote. Sorry.
Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Yes, Madam Acting Mayor, the next item is approval of Journal of Proceedings.
That's part of the consent.
That's part of the consent calendar.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Public hearing.
Public hearing, 0320.
Fire Prevention Code. All right, the first three and only speakers that we have to speak are Vicky Pritchett, Sher Grogg, and Gregory Lawrence, in that order.
Good
Name and
evening.
address for the record, please.
Good evening. Vicky
Good evening.
Pritchett, 514 Progress Drive, Suite A, Linthicum Heights, Maryland.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vicky Pritchett, and I am the Executive Officer of the National Fire Sprinkler Association and facilitator of Common Voices, an advocates coalition that is determined to create a fire-safe America. This coalition is comprised of people who have lost loved ones to fire or are a burn survivor themselves, and you will hear from one of those advocates, Cher Grogg, who has a specific Annapolis connection later this evening. On behalf of those advocates who have lost loved ones to fire and on behalf of communities who have been impacted by the tragedy and economic impact of the loss of fire, I would like to applaud you for the steps you're taking to preserve your historic downtown district. In 1947, President Harry S. Truman convened a fire prevention conference and brought officials from all across the nation together in Washington, D.C. And he said, you know what, we can do better. They had had a series of very significant fires in the U.S., and President Truman brought stakeholders together, both fire service leaders along with community leaders and public policy leaders, and he sat them down at the table and he said, tell me how to fix this. And they developed an action plan that would incorporate fire prevention throughout America. You still see segments of that alive and well today. And I think the efforts that you, as the City Council of Annapolis, are taking to ensure that your historic district does not go up in flames is to be commended. So job well done. Before coming to NFSA, I served as the Community and Economic Development Director for a county in Tennessee, a county that truly embraced community development by ensuring that quality of life, economic development, and fire and life safety all were part of the equation, and that representatives were all at the table, the stakeholders. I know that you have adopted that philosophy as you've made your way to the action that you're prepared to take to protect your historic district. And again, I applaud you for that. I would also like to speak tonight on behalf of NFSA President Shane Ray. He's a former fire chief, state fire marshal, and a mayor himself. Chief Ray understands well the complexities faced and has worked with your committees to get you to this part. He's sorry that he couldn't be here tonight. He's in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He now lives in Maryland, and he wanted me to make sure that I shared with you his pride for Annapolis and the leadership that you are showing in the region, the state, and indeed the nation. He has lots of examples from across the country where cities are trying to and have successfully adopted requirements to preserve and protect their historic district. Places like Grapevine, Texas, Louisville, Texas, and Loveland, Sims, Ohio. These communities have offered incentives, worked with the ISO for fire protection classifications, and even funded the project. It's exciting to think that Annapolis is joining this elite group. And again, we applaud you for your work in this area. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I missed the person. I'm sorry. Josh Shapiro? I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Josh Shapiro, 1101 Hampton Park Boulevard, number 200, Capitol Heights, Maryland, 20743. I stand here today not only as the regional manager for Reliable Automatic Sprinkler Company, a leading manufacturer in fire sprinkler products, but also as the chairperson for the Capital Region Fire Sprinkler Association, which represents fire sprinklers, suppliers, and vendors in Maryland, Washington, D.C., and Northern Virginia. As you're well aware, a few blocks away from City Hall, where we stand today, the Annapolis Yacht Club had a devastating fire a few years ago. At that time, that building did not have fire sprinklers, and unfortunately, $9 million worth of damage occurred. Fortunately, however, there were only a few people inside of it who got out of the building safely. Most are workers who were preparing for the festivities that night for the boat parade. Had the fire occurred when the club was completely full, loss of life could have occurred. Madam Mayor, fire sprinklers save lives. They are first on scene before firefighters arrive. You should be very happy that above your heads are some fire sprinklers. Like life insurance, hopefully these fire sprinklers will never be used, but if they do, they could potentially save your lives. In my capacity as a regional manager for a fire sprinkler manufacturer, I'm proud to say that my fire sprinkler products are now protecting the Annapolis Yacht Club. Given that I love to sail, I wanted to make sure that the new building had my products in it. In my capacity as a chairperson for the Regional Fire Sprinkler Association, my chapter would like to show full support for the efforts being set forward. We can't afford to lose our historic buildings and nearby businesses. We also can't afford to lose life and look back to today knowing that we could have done something to change it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chair Grog. Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Cher Grog. I live at 38906 Point Drive in Selbyville, Delaware. Sorry, I have laryngitis, so I'm a little weak here. But I'm here actually on behalf of Common Voices. Basically, we're a fire safety group which supports fire sprinklers and endorses anybody that uses them. We actually believe very heavily in them due to the fact that we've all lost loved ones in fires and feel that fire sprinklers could have saved our loved ones. My relationship with Annapolis is very near and dear to me, is that it was basically a second home to me when my brother was alive. My brother was taken from me in 2015 in the Child's Point fire. He, his wife, and their 4 grandchildren perished in that tragic fire. And since that day, I've advocated for fire sprinklers because my brother did not have them. And although he had a nearly commercial structure home, I mean, we all felt that it was a fortress. It was built with stone on the outside, steel beams. I mean, it was really very close to commercial construction. And it went up in absolutely no time. I'm here really just to talk about the speed of fire and how fire sprinklers really can save lives and protect property, because of the fact that they can delay the fire or even suppress the fire before the fire protectors even get there. I can just relate to you my experience so that you understand how fast fires are the way I do now. I never did understand it before. Now I know that fires can basically, a flashover can occur in a person's house or in any development dwelling or commercial structure, actually, within 3 minutes. Flashover is the point at which the ceiling and the floor equal the same amount of heat, and the whole room basically implodes. Everything catches fire, including the flames, including the smoke. Everything flames up, and it's not survivable. It's very toxic, the flames and fumes. And what happened in my brother's house was just exactly that, under 3 minutes. An example of what happened there was that his smoke detectors went off at 3:28 in the morning. And by 3:31, a neighbor who had insomnia and was looking through her window because she saw an orange glow, and my brother's house wasn't that close, but she could see that flames were leaping through the roof 3 minutes after the smoke detectors went off. And by the time that the firemen got there, it was about 3:40 in the morning. The house was completely engulfed in flames, and they couldn't even enter. So it just shows how fast fire is and how it can spread from building to building. If it were downtown, it would be actually detrimental, obviously. So I applaud your efforts to protect the buildings and save the people within them. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grau. Again, our sympathy to your family, even though it's been a couple of years. Mr. Gregory Lawrence. Chief, good to see you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, council members. My name is Gregory Lawrence. I'm a resident of 8607 Woods End Drive, Laurel, Maryland, in Howard County, Maryland. I'm here tonight, to tell you my role as the Public Safety Chair for the Caucus of African American Leaders here in Annapolis. I have a brief comment about Ordinance 320. The caucus supports Ordinance 320, which, if approved, would be by 2025, requiring sprinkler installation in the historical structures and around the main street, thus increasing the life safety protection of people who work, visit, and live in the area. Life safety is the must come first. Fire sprinkler requirements also have extra additional benefits of maintaining the safety, property, integrity, and distinction of the city as its historical buildings. To all frequenters who visit the Annapolis area should be aware that sprinklers do save lives and property. I want to let you know that installing a sprinkler system will prevent some issues in terms of likeness and dislikes, but they do save lives. Sprinklers are actively utilized throughout the world today, and they really support saving lives and property. It's very important to our first responders, and sometimes our first responders are just not firefighters. Sometimes law enforcement arrive there, and sprinklers, when they get there, will help them possibly to help someone else and save lives. But its primary mission is to help our firefighters in the suppression of firefighting. Not all sprinkler buildings are active throughout the city, but it should be something that everyone has. It does save lives. And you heard my constituents here just talk about some of the things that are special to them in life, history, things that have happened to them. So I really encourage the city to support the ordinance and approve the ordinance. Annapolis has many historical buildings. As you know, sometimes when you have a fire, you cannot replace things that perish. Sometimes through earthquakes, hurricanes, you can repair the facilities, but fires are really not a friendly aspect of destroying property. So the ordinance of 320 really will impact the community, it would impact the visitors who come to Annapolis, and it would impact our historical society here in Annapolis. I strongly encourage you to support ordinance 320.
Thank you, Chief. Can you tell us what your day job has been?
My day job is presently, I'm the Deputy Fire Chief at the BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
If there's anyone else present who would like to speak, you may come forward at this time.
Good evening again. William Small. I support the legislation to facilitate, installation of fire suppression devices in historic homes. And I own a historic home. 1924. It's a historic farmhouse. It was historically the Miller Farm, and I would certainly like to have fire suppression devices in it. So I encourage you all to consider historic homes that exist outside of city limits that should also be preserved and should be eligible for leveraging the city's taxpayer wealth to provide financing for such an installation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Small. Mr. Small, I believe Alderwoman Tierney has a question.
Yes, Mr. Small, I just don't want there to be misrepresentation out there. This is just for commercial buildings on Main Street. You mentioned residential. This is not for residential dwellings. So just that clarity, but thank you for testifying.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here would like to testify on behalf of this matter? I declare the public hearing closed on 03-20. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor. The next item on the agenda is legislative actions, second reader, beginning with R620, Director of Planning and Zoning, Dr. Sally Nash.
Is there a motion to adopt R620 on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, Alderman Savage.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Dr. Nash. I'd like to ask Dr. Nash some questions.
Dr. Nash, would you please come forward?
Kathleen, can somebody get that black thing off the table, please?
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So thank you, Dr. Nash, for your many, many years of service here to the city. I want to start off with that, but I just want to give you an opportunity to kind of talk to the public, right? And I think what I'd like to know more, and I think we've had conversations, I think I know the direction you want to go, I know the quality of your work, and that's why I'll be supporting you. But I think it's a benefit for the public to hear what I know and what I think many of us know. And so one of them would be, so first of all, do you have any, what are your visions, your goals for moving forward? You're making a transition here into potentially, right, into the directorship. So what are your plans?
Right. Well, thank you, Alderman Savage, for the opportunity to express my goals and visions for the department. For me, the mission of the department is to make sure Annapolis is a healthy and resilient city. I want to work with you and the mayor to make sure that we create a safe, balanced, and economically sustainable city with development that protects and enhances quality of life for everyone in the environment. My goals are to enhance public outreach techniques and obtain meaningful citizen participation. I think we can do that today with all of our new technology and also with just old-fashioned boots on the ground. I'd like to work to advance the local economy by encouraging diversity and opportunity, improve compliance rates with fair and consistent enforcement, and honor the city's heritage by taking even the smallest of steps, such as protecting the found artifacts that we find every day while there's work in the historic district. I'll work with council, the mayor, and the public because I know that sometimes decisions are clear, but many times they aren't, and making decision means that not everyone is going to get the outcome he or she wants. We have to have the patience to weigh the alternatives, the courage to make the decisions we think is best, and the tenacity to stand behind those decisions. That's something I strive to achieve every day, and I look forward to working with you to achieve that. I recognize that in order to be effective, I need your full support. I'm a member of a team that includes all of you and all the city staff, and I just want to thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and as I've said before, I've worked with you on a number of issues over the years, and most recently the critical area legislation, and that was very collaborative and helpful process, and definitely look forward to doing more of that in the future. I guess just one more question. So one of the concerns I hear a lot of in my ward are just, we're right on the Annapolis Neck Peninsula and have a number of constraints, it seems like, in terms of issues we have to deal with in terms of new development going on. So is that something that you're aware of? Is that something you want to look at in terms of how development happens in various parts of the city? I'm just wondering what I can tell my constituents in terms of, or what would you tell them in terms of that to address those concerns of theirs?
I would say that now is a good time to get involved with the comprehensive plan so we can look at the kind of development that's going to be the best for the city, the right size of development that benefits the city economically but doesn't put strain on our resources, and that's for citywide.
Mm-hmm. Good. And I guess, well, last question. So recently there was a decision from the Board of Appeals having to deal with adequate public facilities. And so I think one thing that came out of that was, I think that our code, our laws certainly need a lot of improvement. But there was also some concern about staff, not about a number of departments really, in terms of the city in general, how that law gets applied. So do you have any plans in terms of how to address some of those concerns moving forward?
In the long term, I've actually already started working with the directors from the other departments that are involved in adequate public facilities and have to certify that the development meets certain criteria for their department. I think it's up to them to develop the standards and criteria that's going to work best for them. But I'd like to lead the effort and make sure that we get a Title 22 that makes sense and is actually effective in terms of the results we get.
All right, thank you, Dr. Nash.
Thank you, Alderman Savage. And when Alderman Gay returns, then I know he had some questions. Alderman Payon, and then Alderwoman Finlayson.
Thank you. You touched on this a moment ago, but what do you feel the role of the ordinary citizen is in say, contributing to the comprehensive plan or sector studies or policy in general of planning and zoning?
Well, what we're designing for the comprehensive plan is sort of a menu of options for people to be as involved in as they have time to be. So if they just have time to take a survey, they can do that. If they have time to join a committee, they can do that. So there's a whole range of options depending on what kind of time and resources they have, but we want to make sure all the information is online, so even if they can't come to meetings, they can see what we're doing.
Well, what about folks that, for example, you've been here the whole evening, a good part of the evening has been consisted of people coming in and giving us their opinion about something and just testifying, period. How do you feel about citizen input in that regard? People that don't have time to be, or the commitment to be on a committee, but they still want to be heard.
Mm-hmm. Right, and we need to create opportunities for them to do that. So public hearings at night, other ways of giving input during the day if they can't come out at night, and just be creative with how we gather that information.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Nash, I don't have a question. I have a statement, a comment to make. You have been, I don't know when you came to the city in your capacity as a planner, but during my tenure on the council, which is what, 12 years, 13 years now, you have been our acting planning director at least twice. You have marshaled us through comp plan at least once, if not twice, and you're on your way to another. You have dealt with some of the most challenging land use issues that I can imagine any city having to deal with. And you've always done it with professionalism. I think we have all felt your extreme knowledge to the point where we have comfort in your ability to make decisions for us. So I just want to say thank you for stepping up finally and taking the lead on a job that you've really been doing for many, many years. So I congratulate you in advance of our vote.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderwoman Finlayson. I'd like to make a couple of comments. Number one, as a follow-up to what Alderman Payon asked, as far as giving opportunities for those to weigh in depending on schedules, I would like to publicly say, I guess it was about 3 years ago. I'm going to stop right there. Alderman Gay, would you like to ask your questions now?
Yes. They're really not in regards to your appointment, but I guess it's the only time. Why does it take us so long to apply the permits out in regards to short-term rentals, and it takes the county minimal time?
Why does it take so long to approve a permit for short-term rental?
Yeah. The permitting for anything in general. Why does it?
His data was correct.
I mean, I'm also just going off of stories and, just people who've come up here before and said they've waited 2 months. I mean, why does it take that long for a permit?
There are a lot of different reasons. We have a lot of complicated and nuanced land use laws that are different throughout the city. We have a limited number of staff. We have a lot of demands on our time. Right now, we're doing our HACA inspections. Our inspectors are very busy and booked up with their schedules. To get the short-term rental license, your house has to be inspected. So you have to get in line. So there's a lot of different reasons.
So we have like 4 bills in right now that will require inspections, in particular. Obviously, you mentioned HACA with their continued inspections. The sprinkler bill that we just previously talked about, it mentioned something about inspections. If the short-term rental resolution that he is proposing tonight, it would require inspections. Like, how would you guide your staff to handle that and also provide, timely assistance to our community?
The sprinklers is up to the fire marshal's office, so not up to planning and zoning, although we work with them. The short-term rentals, we are accommodating them as they come in, but again, it just might take a little bit of time. Again, and HACA, we're managing pretty well. The issue there is having to go back 2 or 3 times to the same property to make sure that they've come into compliance. But once they've gotten used to our inspection schedule and the way we do things, I think that will be remedied as well. And again, next year going forward, hopefully we won't have to go to every unit 2 times. Hopefully we'll be able to pass them first time around. So I think it's just a little bit of a learning curve for us. But once we get up and going, we'll be able to accommodate the new short-term rental licenses that are also
if
coming
you're
in.
appointed as director, just knowing the demand of the inspections, is that something that you would advocate for within your budget and bringing in additional staff to handle those issues, or?
Is now a good time to plug my enhancement request? I am looking at our budget and seeing what changes we can make and adjustments we can make.
Cool, thanks very much.
Thank you, Alderman Gay. I have a couple of things one thing I'm going to restart, but I'm going to address Alderman Gay's concern, and this is just me talking. Why does it take so long? And this is just my impression. First of all, with the county, there are more open spaces. There are more, usually, in many instances, more land between individual homes. In the city, we're so compacted until if somebody sneezes next door, we can hear it, literally. So my take is we have to be even more concerned about what we do in the city because everybody's bumped up against each other. So that's just my 2 cents worth why the county is a little bit different, and I'm sure they have more staff, but we're much more, I won't say that word. We're much more concerned, I guess, about the neighbor next door. So we have to be much more particular about the decisions that we make versus the county. And that's no disparagement to the county, but that's just my 2 cents worth. Number 2, as far as, I'll go back to Alderman Payon's issue regarding opportunities for all to weigh in. I'm going to go back about 4 years, 2016, to the Upper West Street sector study that was a large part of Ward 3. At that time, Dr. Nash, as well as her team at that time, came to Ward 3 and Ward 2 and asked us to join into a small group setting, and I guess it was about maybe 5 or 6 groups of about 5 people. And then we had a larger charrette, a 3-day charrette at Mount Olive AME Church that was attended by probably about 200 people. And also online, you got a couple of hundred responses to that. So that was a very good exercise that we had in coming up with what we wanted or didn't want, or what we saw and what we didn't see, and what we needed and didn't need, and it was a huge participation. So publicly, I'd like to thank you for that. So that's my personal example of what Dr. Nash and her team back then did for Wards 2 and 3. That's my 1 cent worth. Number 3, and this was a concern that was brought to our attention by some residents in the city, and I decided to send it out as well as to my colleagues about a week ago, and I'm going to read it. It's very short, and it's concerning a deputy position versus a chief's position. Serving as a deputy chief of a large division within Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office for almost 12 years, I can truly say firsthand that oftentimes what the chief decides to do is not necessarily what a deputy chief would want to do or would do. My chief and I had many disagreements as to which way the office should go policy-wise and how operational and management matters should be handled on a daily basis. And oftentimes the deputy chief has very little say, if any, and therefore the deputy is beholden to what the chief decides to do. Bottom line, too often than not, the deputy chief is put in a very precarious spot. You have to go along with something that the chief wants to do that you don't want to do, and when you do have an opportunity to be the chief, you are, quote, labeled with what has gone on under the former chief. And that's just my 3 cents worth in, and I think I'm up to a nickel. Anyway, I fully support Dr. Nash this evening. She has done a wonderful job. I'm going to echo. I'm not going to repeat what Alderwoman Finlayson has said, but I totally support you, and I've got reason to do that. If I didn't, I would say so. But Dr. Nash, thank you so much for all you've done, stepping in interimly many times to help us out as well. And yes, you may include that in your enhancement, Mr. Gerald. Thank you very much. Yes, Alderman Savage. Oh, Alderwoman Tierney, sorry.
Thank you, Acting Madam Mayor. This is a little difficult, so I wrote it down, so bear with me. And I have talked to Sally about this. After my public support of Dr. Nash at the last council meeting, deserving the director position based on her knowledge of the city and obvious commitment to the city, I have since attended an Annapolis Environmental Commission meeting, a Planning Commission meeting, previously a Ward 1 Residents Association meeting, and a Forest Drive Task Force meeting with Dr. Nash in attendance. After these meetings, I realized that this position approval is really an acceptance of the status quo, and the status quo is incongruent to adapting change for the benefit of all of Annapolis. Yes, the argument that Sally has had two jobs so that Dr. Nash has had two jobs so that she hasn't been able to focus on one or the other is to be considered, but that should not be the basis of the decision. Ward 1 constituents have lost faith in the 2009 comprehensive plan when it was not implemented specific to the historic at-risk residential areas, and more recently, the recent ADU legislation that, again, was not per the 2009 comprehensive plan. This dialogue on development, whether it's environmental or affordable housing, these are really important issues. And I'm reminded of my days in construction when we would be putting together a schedule for a $200 million project. Bear with me, but inevitably the sprinkler guy would want to be the only one in the ceiling at the time. The millwork guy wanted complete humidity control before he installed it, and the glass guy would have us wait for the earth to move before he could deliver. It took an objective project executive pulled from another project or region to come in and say, look guys, if you all had it your own way, nothing would get accomplished. And he or she diplomatically had everyone give up something. Dr. Nash's resume speaks more to planning. And with the comprehensive plan 2020 underway, her planning expertise is needed. I therefore urge the mayor to look outside for a new planning and zoning director with fresh lenses to stop this stalemate in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman Tierney. Alderman Savage, Alderman Gay, Alderman Arnett. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. So I just wanted to go back a bit on that tangent of the permits to kind of correct the record. I used to work with our permitting staff as a permit reviewer, and I don't think we should accept as fact a statement made by the public that our permit review times are longer than the county's. That's anecdotal evidence. I think we need to stand up for our staff in that regard. We do have, if people want to look into that, we do have the data on review times in our code enforcement, or at least we did 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was. I'm sure we still have that data we can look at, but I think we need to make sure we look at this objectively instead of just assuming that we take forever, because there are a lot of things to consider. We do have a lot of environmental regulations to look at now, right, to go through. But I also know that in some of these larger projects and larger permit reviews, that it's often a case where the applicant is dragging their feet and not wanting to listen to staff, so things drag on and on. But staff gets blamed. Anyway, I just wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you. Alderman Gay?
Thanks. So I'm looking at the planning and zoning page on the city website. It doesn't mention, and let me look at the comprehensive plan just to be sure really quickly. I don't see much about public housing, not a link to it or any plans. I do see housing.
If you look right in the comprehensive plan, we address housing. Also in the community development division, she specifically addresses different issues through her consolidated plan and analysis of impediments for low-income housing.
Community development division?
Development.
Okay.
Thank you, Alderman Gay. Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is your second stint at being acting, and now we're going to move to being permanent. And I have to say I liked a lot of the things I heard in your statement, particularly about citizen outreach. My hope for you and for us in this appointment is that, and if we get some enhancements, and you know I've been a fan of that for a long time, that we get the staff and the strength of staff and the direction of the staff to be able to give more time to a thorough review of applications and more time for a thorough review of legislation. We heard a lot tonight about concerns over a particular piece of legislation that I'm tired of hearing about, and I think many others are also. But it's critical stuff, and it's very important. And you really are our first line of defense, our first line of action. You and your staff make recommendations to the Planning Commission. They often are the ultimate land use authority, and it's critical that they get the best possible and broadest spectrum of information. So I am encouraging you to take your new permanent position as a license to put your own stamp on things and hopefully follow through with the statements that you make. So thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Arnett. Alderman Payon.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. I've worked with Dr. Nash on numerous projects, and I've had occasion, perhaps far more often, to call on you for much smaller things than that. She is responsive, always been responsive. Sometimes before I even hang up the phone, I have the answer I was looking for. I have an advantage that most of the rest of my colleagues don't have. That is, I have my youngest brother has a master's in city planning and has been employed by the State Department of Planning and various jurisdictions about the state. He knows Dr. Nash. He said she enjoys an excellent reputation, although he's not quite as familiar with her work as he was with our former Director of Planning and Zoning, but she has a good reputation. I asked him in some detail about a PhD in geography versus city planning. And he said, well, you know, let me put it this way. The University of Maryland, until recently, their graduate school in this field was the School of Urban Planning and Geography, which is exactly the same thing. Now, I don't doubt that there may be some subtle differences between the two, but they're so closely related that I think she satisfies the requirements by statute in light of what, at least in light of what my brother told me. I have no reason to question that. I question a lot of other things about my little brother, but that's not one of them. I think that, you know, you're right. Those that would like for us to do that, who say we ought to do the quote nationwide search, that's fine, that's good. It would cause delay, it would cost us money. I think we'd probably end up paying more money, to be honest. I mean, not that you wouldn't be worth more money, but to draw somebody here from out of state based partly on a salary is something we have to think about. I don't know if we'd be capable of doing that at this point. I think we have somebody who's done a good job. You said this is the second time she's been the acting director. I thought it was more than that, to be honest. I mean, it seems like every time the our planning and zoning director takes a vacation, you know, it's acting director Nash that comes before us. I've said quite enough, but suffice it to say, I strongly support Dr. Nash's application for this position.
Thank you, Alderman Payon. Alderman Gay.
Thanks. Quick question, kind of following up on what Rob asked in the beginning and what you would do differently in your role as director. So in my ward, I know we've had several discussions about bringing in businesses and helping them fit the models and the code and all that stuff. How can the department change its approach to that by being more effective with helping the businesses and, you know, trying to fit things down into a timeline so that they don't lose interest in wanting to participate in the city or wanting to bring their businesses here?
Well, the last 6 months, we've hired a new economic development manager, and he and the small business, minority business coordinator have done a lot of work to do outreach to the business community and make sure they know that they can always call on them if they're having any kind of issue with their permit or any navigational assistance needed. They can call on our staff and they'll help them with things. Every day, Hope or Steve was saying, well, what about this business? Do they really need a grease trap? And we said, yes, they really need a grease trap. You know, but they've done a lot of work and they have a lot of things planned to really help promote Annapolis and to encourage small businesses to come here.
Thank you, Alderman Gay. One other thing I want to point out concerning that Office of Economic Development and that the two people we have hired, I know within the past year or so, they have conducted quarterly roundtables at Pitt Moyer, and they have partnered with the county, their county counterparts on those. They've been very well attended. And number two, they have done tremendous outreach to the Latino community as well. The newsletter is awesome. It is really awesome. I know Alderman Arnett or Alderman Tierney, I try to go to the monthly, it's so early in the morning, monthly business leadership meetings, and there's always a report from the mayor's office as well as the alderpersons. But it's good to hear that they're doing so well. I think they've got some great ideas. The Love Annapolis during the holiday time I thought was novel. So I've been really impressed. I met with Mr. Rice for 5 hours over lunch. but it was yes, he did. But anyway, so those are some of the other things to kind of answer Alderman Gay's question. But anyway, the other thing I want to point out, we have City Manager Gerald here as well as Ms. Hopkins that may be able to lend some information concerning the national search. Ms. Hopkins, you want to come up to the table as well?
Actually, I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So as you all know, Pete Gutwald left last spring, so it's been almost a year that he's been gone. We actually did a national search. It was advertised on June 13th. And it was to remain open until filled. We received 22 applicants, which is somewhat of a low number of applicants for a lot of these jobs. We get so many applicants that don't even remotely qualify for these positions. But we got 22 in this case. Only 6 of those were minimally qualified. All of those were interviewed. None of those included Dr. Nash. None of the 22 included Dr. Nash. So after and I was on the panel for those interviews, 2 of them were sort of shortlisted and went to background checks. One of them withdrew after the background check, so he decided not to continue with the process. He was from New Jersey, so that left one still standing. He came and met with the mayor and city manager. He was from Georgia. Speaking of the national search and having to move people, he got a job offer and decided not to come. So at that point, it was back to square zero. So I'm not sure that we should expect a different result from the same process if we thought that we would find somebody with an outside perspective that would be fully qualified and would be more qualified than Dr. Nash. My personal feeling after being through that process is the answer is no to that. So I strongly support her nomination, and I know the mayor does as well.
Thank you, Mr. Gerald. Ms. Hopkins, would you like to add anything?
Well, as you pointed out before, that Dr. Nash has had more than one acting period here. And so we conducted a national search when we hired Mr. Gutwald. And so we're not new to this effort in terms of casting the net. And so that result was very similar. We were very fortunate in attracting Mr. Gutwald, who was part of it, I think, was so he could continue his pension as part of the Maryland State Retirement Service. So, you know, sometimes you got a nice hook to bring people in with, but it's really their option whether they want to come to the city of Annapolis and relocate from somewhere else. There's a lot to be said for having a local background, understanding both a historic maritime district. We try very hard to, when we do our national search, to really describe what Annapolis is about and what the characteristics of planning are in this environment. And so when you're looking for qualified candidates, you want to make sure that you're attracting individuals that know and understand that as well. I would echo also what David said, is that, you know, you don't just look for something different because you can. You look at what you're able to attract and you balance that with what you already have in hand. And I would hope that you make your assessments on the basis of that. We went through that considerable effort to attract individuals to consider the city of Annapolis, and we did not succeed at that. And we can go back out again and do the same thing, but then you're losing more time. You have quite a few initiatives ahead of you, which have already been outlined, and I can speak also from the standpoint of having to do more than one job at the same time. When you have less staff to carry out those responsibilities, you need to make sure that you consider that element in filling positions.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkins. Any other discussion? Or Dr. Nash, would you like to add anything? Thank you. Any more discussion from the dais? Okay, thank you. Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Acting Mayor Pendell Charles.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
Aye.
Alderman Tierney.
No.
Alderman Payon.
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson.
Aye.
Alderman Gay.
Aye.
The motion passes. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor, the next item on the agenda is O-2819, Tattoo Parlor.
Is there a motion to withdraw O-2819 on second reader?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I motion to withdraw this legislation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Ayes have it. It is withdrawn. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor, the next item is legislative actions, first reader, beginning with O-920, comprehensive bag reduction.
Is there a motion to adopt O-920 on first reader?
So move.
Second? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We will refer O-920 to the Environmental Matters Committee and the Housing and Human Welfare Committee. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Yes, ma'am. The next item is R-1220, comprehensive bag reduction, fines, for the purpose of imposing fines concerning the prohibition of certain checkout bags.
Is there a motion to adopt R-1220 on first reader?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. The ayes have it.
Madam Chair, could I get 09 and R12 both referred to Rules and City Government Committee?
Yes, ma'am. So noted. We will refer R 1220 to the Environmental Matters Committee and the Housing and Human Welfare Committee. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor, the next item on the agenda is R 1120, World Migratory Bird Day Resolution.
Is there a motion to adopt R 1120 on first reader?
So moved.
Sorry,
Is
what
there a second?
1120?
R 1120.
Do we have that?
What's the title of that again?
It was adopted at the approval of the agenda, according to Madam Clerk.
1120? Yeah, second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have
Madam-
it. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to just be added as a co-sponsor.
So noted, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules to allow passage of resolution at the meeting of its introduction here? It must be unanimous.
For R 1120.
R 1120.
They're having a
Do you-
ceremony before your next city council meeting, before you can adopt it. I was told that the bill needs to be adopted.
Yeah, I think the award is being issued. Yes,
It's
very
coming up
soon.
next week before your next meeting.
Yeah.
I know, but we just saw it tonight.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules to allow passage of this resolution?
Is this?
I'll move, but I don't understand myself the connection with the award. But
Is there a second? The World Migratory Bird Day Resolution. Apparently, Bird Day is next week. Is that right, Madam Clerk?
Second.
The 22nd?
Wait a minute, yeah, 22nd of April, I don't know why it has to be done tonight.
Well, if it's the 22nd of April.
I think the World Migratory Bird Day is April the 22nd, but I think they're having a ceremony in a couple weeks.
Who is handling the ceremony? Is that a state ceremony or?
well, it's I'm trying to remember what I read about it. It's
participation in the Bird City.
It's a state program, but it's being the ceremony is being hosted, I believe, by the Annapolis Green group. And Director Gild is going to be there. She sent an email inviting the council to accept the award. And so I'm not sure if this is a requirement of the application or not. Looks like this is just, I'll look up that email.
Ms. Smith, maybe you can lend some information on the microphone, please.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, they're trying to blend this with Earth Day. That's the date that's coming up before the next council meeting.
What is
Earth Day.
Earth is
Earth Day,
April 20.
okay.
Earth Day is in April, so what do we?
This particular resolution is for Bird City, Maryland Award, Annapolis Green. Next is February the 19th from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Graduate Hotel. So you're right, Regina.
Thank you.
Mr. Gerald, are you familiar
I don't
with this?
see that.
We got it in an email on February the 7th.
I mean, as far as whether it's mandatory that we pass this in order for them to receive the award.
I was
guess is
just
my
trying to
question.
look up emails, so let me check real quick and see what I can find
Okay.
pertaining to that
Can
date.
we-
Can I move to,
It's adopted on
motion?
first reader. It'll just go, if you don't suspend it, well, it just goes on the next meeting.
Can I just make a motion to put this at the end of the agenda so we can see if we can find an answer?
Huh?
I mean, it's already.
Do we
kind
have
of
to have a
being-
motion for that, to move it to the end of the agenda?
We can just go back to it. I don't
Okay,
think
we'll
it's-
go back to
we'll
it.
just
Thank
go
you,
back
Mr.
to it
Gerald.
if you want to.
Can I
Okay,
have
we'll
a
come back.
question?
Yes, Alderman Finlayson.
It sounds like there's some financial implications also. So is there going to be a financial impact statement to accompany this?
Yes,
Thank
I
you,
was
Alderman
planning on doing that after this. I hadn't even seen the drafted resolution until tonight, but Ms. Guile did email us about the legislation, and there is a requirement that we purchase some signage for the city, and that is going to have a minor fiscal impact cost, plus we have to maintain the signs.
We have to maintain the signs?
Well, but yes, yeah. They get damaged, cleaning
What does
them.
that mean?
Yeah, it'll be very minimal. So it'll probably have to replace the signs at some point, probably 10 or 15 years from now, but maintenance of signs is pretty minimal. If it gets knocked down, we'll have to put a new one back up.
So it's an ongoing,
It's a new sign, so our sign crew, the Public Works sign crew, will have to maintain it.
okay,
So
I'm not
replace it when
clear.
it's time to replace it, and if it gets knocked down, to put it back up.
Where are the signs?
The signs are going to be provided to the city, and they're going to be installed by the Public Works crew. I think it's just 2 signs, if I recall correctly. It's just 2 signs that will be installed.
Yellow sign?
No.
I was about to say,
No.
Madam Mayor, we don't have a second,
Second.
so the discussion is out of
I
order at
second
this
it.
point.
I did
Okay.
So we have to either get a motion in a second, put the matter on the table to have continued discussion.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Do we have a second?
Hold on for a second. Rob made a motion to suspend the rules, and he did get a second, so.
Who seconded?
He-
Oh, okay.
yeah, so
Okay,
we
thank
are
you.
in the
Gotcha.
right
Okay,
place.
no problem. I'm
Yes.
sorry, go ahead, Mr. Gerald.
Yeah, so I found an email from Jackie. So she said that they're trying to get it on the agenda as soon as possible because the award is going to be presented on February 19th. So just
Mr. Gerald, do you have a ballpark figure, or Ms. Dickerson, regarding
I found this.
the cost?
Okay, so when she first wrote the email, she had drafted a fiscal impact statement of her own. And I haven't verified this, but we did trade a few emails back and forth. She said, the fiscal impact of acquiring the Bird City designation and joining the Bird City, Maryland program is $125 application fee and $125 annual renewal fee. And then when you read further about what the agreement calls for, that we have to get some permanent signage and maintain the signage. So that's where that comes in, about $100 a sign for 2 signs.
So we're talking under $1,000?
100,
500?
yeah, under 500.
Yes, Alderwoman Finlayson.
I'm just not clear why we have this without all the information. We're having to dig into emails, and by no fault of your own.
Right.
To figure out what we're doing here. Shouldn't we not have this information in a staff report and a financial impact statement before we get this? Not that I don't support the activity, but there's a process.
Yeah, I
And
think,
now we're
I
trying
think the
to figure it
process
out.
was short-circuited because of the February 19th date. So it was being rushed through.
Thank you, Dave.
Ms. Smith, you want
need
to
to
come up
come
to
to
the
the mic
microphone, please?
This would make Annapolis the first city receiving this designation. That is what the 19th is all about.
Thank you.
Does this mean we don't get the Bird City Award? I mean, designation, I guess, if we don't pass this tonight? I mean, see,
Not for now, yes.
so we don't get that award if,
Well, eventually, but not in time to.
Well, if we're the only ones,
Well,
I'm not clear what.
well, we're the second city in Maryland to achieve the Bird City designation. We'll be the first to achieve the High Flyer Award.
Okay, so let me ask a question, if I might.
Yes,
This is
Alderwoman
not a
Finlayson.
new program, right? This program has been ongoing. It sounds like this is maybe the second year that it's being awarded. Am I wrong? Nobody knows, but we're not the first, according to what the Alderman just read. So why aren't we better prepared to deal with this?
We got a second, is that correct?
You can call a question, you have a motion to call it.
Call a question.
Suspending the rules?
Suspend the rules. Is there a motion to suspend the rules to allow passage of resolution at the meeting of its introduction here?
We have a motion and a second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Anyone oppose?
Okay, so it's not done, we're done.
Thank you.
So this will go on the next agenda for the February, I think, 24th meeting as a second reader.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor, this is the opportunity to consider R520 on second reader, R720 on first reader, and R1020 on first reader. We can take them each one at a time. R520 on second reader.
University of Maryland Baltimore study on the health effects of air traffic noise.
Let's pull it off the consent calendar.
Yes, sir.
Move
Okay.
approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, Alderman Payon.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I was told after last meeting that this had to do with, I thought, with fuel being dumped over parts of the city and the health effects of that. And then I read the bill and it's nothing like that at all. Or the ordinance, or the bills, excuse me. It really is just air traffic noise. Look, I had some second thoughts about voting on this 2 weeks ago because I hadn't seen the House and the Senate bills. I've got no problem supporting it. I think we ought to go ahead and I'd urge my colleagues to do the same. I mean, it doesn't seem to be any cost involved. We're simply saying we agree with the study.
Thank you, Alderman Payon. Alderman Arnett.
Yes, just a point of information. It's not about dumping fuel. It's that this allows them to fly coming in below 5,000 feet, which means that not all of the jet fuel is burnt, and at that low level, it doesn't have the ability to evaporate before it hits us and the water and those sorts of things. So it's not about them dumping fuel. It's just the natural consequence of flying below 5,000 feet means we get some raw fuel on us. But I also support us giving our support to this legislation.
Thank you, Alderman Arnett. Any other discussion from the dais?
Yes.
Thank you, Alderwoman Finlayson.
Should I assume that all of the delegates and senators, since this bill seems to be cross-referenced, no, it's not, two separate bills, are all folks that are within the range of BWI Airport? And that every jurisdiction is being asked to support this because we're in that proximity?
Flight path.
Flight path.
I guess the sponsors of the bill could best answer your question.
I can't answer that right now. I would have to make sure before I answered affirmatively on where they all live. Is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm asking if everybody who's in the flight path.
Correct.
Is being asked to do a similar resolution to support the legislation.
I don't know. I don't know. Mary Reese came to us, but I didn't ask that question.
Alderman Savage, Alderman Arnett, or Alderman Gay? Do you have any response to Alderwoman Finlayson's question?
I don't know where the, I know some of them are local people, obviously.
Alderman Gay, did you have a response?
Just based off of the names that I'm looking at here, most of our, obviously our D30 crew, then you have MoCo and one Howard delegate. Delegate. So yeah, it's, most of them are within that, within the distance of BWI.
And I'm asking my question because if everyone who's in the flight path is not included, I wonder how effective our resolution will be.
I wonder that.
I can speak to some of the folks whose names I recognize who are in Harford County, for example. Now, maybe they're in a flight path too, I don't know, but I'm just asking for information.
Alderwoman Tierney, did you have a response?
Yes, in looking at my notes from a phone conversation with Mary Reese, the logic was that the city of Annapolis would have a lot of influence because we're the capital of Maryland. So that's why she approached us. What, sir? I don't know if Sheila heard me.
Alderman Payon, I have a question for you. I believe at our last council meeting, you gave some information concerning this anecdotally, concerning maybe your residents. Am I correct?
Well, I've never gotten a complaint about either noise or a fuel dump of any kind, which, again, this doesn't directly deal with that, but indirectly it does. What I've been told is that basically, 90% of the time, the planes coming from the south, coming from the west, occasionally coming from the east, depending on where they're coming from, go up the bay, make a left turn, if you will, at the Severn River, and that would account for why they might fly over Eastport more than they would Ward 2. By the time they get Ward 2, they're out over the river. Occasionally, I can look out. I live across the street from the water, not on it, but and facing the direction of the Severn River. Occasionally, I can go out my back door and I'll see a plane that isn't out over the river yet, but it doesn't really affect Ward 2 very much, and we're perhaps as directly in the flight path as any other part of town. But having said that, this simply says study health effects of air traffic noise, and how can I be against that? I'm all for it, but the effect of the noise on Ward 2, it's been I haven't gotten any complaints. It's the best thing I can say.
I'm curious, and was there someone specifically within the Maryland Senate or House that contacted us about this?
Yes, that was
The person that Alderman Gay mentioned?
Well, Mary Reese presented to the Environmental Matters Committee on January 15th.
Well, do you know what section of the state she represents?
Oh, well, she was supported by State Senator Sarah Elfreth, Alice Kane, and Shanika.
Oh, okay. Now I see the connection.
Senator Riley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
His name is on it.
Yeah, one thing I guess we should also mention is that it's the present situation, but there's also the possibility that this BWI will become more of a gateway for Amazon, which means the prime delivery planes, et cetera. So, and again, as my colleague said, we don't know the effects, so consequently, we're supporting the request for a study.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I was the anecdotal one, but it was the parking lot of Glen Burnie. Is that what you're thinking about?
I don't recall.
Okay.
It came from that side of the room, I remember.
Yeah, that was me when I went to, where did I go? Walmart in Glen Burnie.
I guess we can't oppose a study.
Yeah, that's
concerning this. I guess a study is not harmful. Yes, Alderman.
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap this conversation up really quick. So we got a really good email this week from a constituent. He was actually in Ward 8, but he sent it out to the whole crew. Just letting us know about how his roof has been affected. He sent before and after photos as well, which show really good description of this grimy oil-like, substance on his roof from this path. And he also recommended an app called Air Noise, which allows you to file complaints to BWI. So I just wanted to throw it out as well.
Yes, I recall that. I could see the footprints on the roof, yeah. Okay. All right, there was a motion made and there was a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you call the next matter on the agenda, please?
Yes, R720 from the consent agenda is up for first reader.
07.
R720.
R720, position classifications.
All right.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
My fault. 0720.
0720, designated loading zones.
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
I asked
Alderman.
this to be taken off the consent calendar so that I could ask that rules and city government be added for the review. I don't have a problem with this specifically until I got to page 3 and I see the new language, which is, to me, not clear. It seems to give the Director of Public Works a lot of authority to be able to designate these loading zones. And I'd like the opportunity on the Rules Committee to hear more about that part of the legislation.
So noted.
Okay, but we can do it at the committee, right?
So noted, Alderman
Thank you.
Arnett at his committee.
So I move approval of, on first reader of 07-20.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Yes, I think I'm correct with this one. R1020, first reader.
1020. Yes, moratorium on the issuance of short-term rental licenses.
Move.
So moved. What, do I hear motion
So moved.
to adopt R-1020?
So
I
moved.
believe our city attorney has some guidance for us at this.
It needs to get a second.
I'll second.
A second, thank you. Discussion, our city attorney, I believe, has some guidance for us.
We're still working through it, Madam Mayor. We were concerned about the effect of R1020, given that an ordinance was passed in this regard, but we're going to continue to research the issue, and hopefully between now and the second reader, we'll have further guidance.
Thank you. Yes, Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just to speak to that guidance first and then to the resolution, I have some questions about the power of a resolution, which is a sense of the council, to do anything, and particularly to direct staff to take action with regard to duly passed changes to the code, and especially given that section of our code which prohibits the council from giving direct orders to our staff. So I think there's some questions about what is the meaning of a resolution to do a moratorium. I don't find anything in the code that gives us the power to do a moratorium, but I suppose we can vote to do anything we want to do. I would think that something like this would be more appropriate coming from the mayor through the city manager to staff if that's action that is wanted. But in terms of the moratorium itself, and we heard...
Alderman Arnett, I'm going to stop you in mid-sentence. I'm sorry. I've been advised Alderwoman Tierney... Yes, ma'am. That's all right. Not a problem. Not a problem.
Is there anything else on the agenda?
No, that'll be the last thing. Okay. You can come back and take us out if you like. Excuse me, Alderman Arnett. You may continue.
So we heard a lot of mixed testimony tonight about many people who would be affected if we put this moratorium in place because they want to apply to get a permit. And let me digress for a second. I mean, there remains confusion apparently on many of the public. It has always been the code that people were supposed to be inspected and licensed. That's not new to 02619. That has been the code for all along. And the primary purpose of 02619 was to allow us to identify, to help the staff, give the staff the tools where they could more effectively identify who's doing this business, whether they've applied for a license or not, but particularly if they haven't applied for a license, because they need to do that. So I think there's some public harm if we impose a moratorium on those people who want to get their permits. Secondly, the reason that we need to go forward and not stop getting the information is that we still need to get an accurate reflection of the number of people who are out there operating with or without the licenses, but particularly without the license. And I think giving them a moratorium means that they can continue to operate illegally for a year or however long the moratorium is in place. And I think that, again, is not in the public interest. There are actions that are going on right now. On the 6th of January, I went to the Office of Law, where I was received by the city attorney and all of the law staff and the law, Jacqueline, the paralegal who draft legislation, and I asked specifically for research and development of new code in Title 21 to look at the one issue that seems to be a recurring theme, particularly in wards 1 and 8, which is concentration of short-term rentals. And so if, as one of the stated purposes for the moratorium is to give us time to develop new legislation, I think we're already in the process of developing new legislation. We can do that with or without a moratorium. We are in the awkward position of the county now having done two things: one, their own short-term rental legislation, but also their legislation that allows us to be able to piggyback with them on their taxing authority so that we can tax. So another goal of the legislation was to try to create a level playing field amongst all of the people doing short-term rentals. If we do a moratorium, we're not doing that. I would point out that licenses are granted annually. So if at some point along the way we come up with changes in Title 21 that have a new set of rules, when the annual renewal comes up, we have an opportunity to employ that licensing change at that time. So I think there's some real questions about what is the reason for a moratorium, and they, for me, do not satisfy. So I think that when you take into consideration that there's not public benefit, and in fact there's public harm to some for the moratorium, I would argue that we not impose or vote to have a moratorium.
Thank you, Alderman Arnett. Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so the goal is really kind of to buy us time. It's to pause the issuance of new permits until we do get to Title 21, which is, I think, what many of us have said we want to change is Title 21. So if we're going to change that title, which I think will very likely involve a reduction of existing STRs, any kind of change to 21, at least if we follow the same approach that we did with traditional bed and breakfasts, which are limited on a per block basis. But maybe we limit if it's 2 or more or 3 or more STRs in one unit, those are limited per block. But in any case, in some fashion, we'll most likely be limiting them. And so, shouldn't we pass a moratorium until we figure that out? Because what I'm trying to avoid is having to, in the future, if we have this large slew of applications come in for new licenses, and then we have to turn around when we adjust Title 21 and have to grandfather properties or pick winners and losers, have a lottery system, which is what some jurisdictions have done. But most likely we're going to have to figure out some way to winnow down the numbers. And so a moratorium would prevent us from at least having a huge increase at the time until we figure out what rules we want the short-term rentals to play by. And so, but also I think the change to 21 is really needed to address the primary issue in my mind anyway, which is the high density of short-term rentals in certain neighborhoods in the city. And again, the legislation that we just passed in, December, I guess, doesn't address that issue. It does get things moving for us to get more data and to make the properties safer by requiring the inspections. And this moratorium legislation would not stop that. It would not change that. So permits currently under review, permits looking to get renewed would still have to comply with the recently passed legislation and the new requirements. It doesn't, as Mr. Boreano incorrectly asserted, reverse what was just passed. It's a pause that sets the stage for future adjustments and allows us to avoid having to grandfather a significant number of short-term rentals when we do get to Title 21. And additionally, I think it helps create a sense of urgency for us to get 21 adjusted. And I think there is a sense of urgency, obviously, amongst the public one way or another for us to figure this out and to adjust it. So again, my goal is not to reverse what was passed. If this resolution doesn't accomplish my goal, and hopefully some of our goals, then I'm certainly open to amendments and taking a different approach. But again, I think we need to do something to address this issue of overdensity in the short term. And this kind of lays the groundwork for that. And in terms of imposing harm on those seeking to get a license, one option could be, assuming this gets cleared with the law office, it would be to just simply delay the active date of this legislation. If we want to give people more time to submit applications, but that still doesn't address the fact that we will likely have to reduce the number of short-term rentals in the future somehow on some of these streets. So again, we're just allowing this problem to get compounded the longer we allow these applications to come in. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Savage. Alderman Gay?
Would you actually be able to speak to any an increase in applications for the short-term licenses since we passed that on the 13th?
I don't know if we've received additional ones or not. But we can certainly check and get back to you tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Gerald. Thank you, Alderman Gay. Yes, Alderman Payne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I plan on, I think, invoke what I call the Dick Israel rule. It's on first reader. I'd be willing to bet. I can't say I've never voted against something on first reader. That wouldn't be true. I have, but 99% of the time, I do vote on first reader simply to, in some cases, so we can simply put something to bed finally. And but here, this does not mean that ultimately I'm going to be voting in favor of this by any means. I'm well aware of what the original purpose was, and I actually considered filing a moratorium similar to this, although for a much shorter period of time, when we were debating back and forth what we were going to do with 2619. But tonight, it's only first reader, and I think there's nothing wrong with having a little deeper discussion than we could possibly have tonight. I know what my position is, and let me just say again that this doesn't mean I'm going to vote for this, after on second reader by any means. But tonight, my colleague, former colleague, Mr. Israel's, he lives on.
Thank you, Alderman Payne. Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you. I too traditionally live by the Dick Israel rule. And I rue the day we made a decision to vote in opposition to a piece of legislation that the mayor proposed last year, and said I would not do that again. But on this legislation, I feel compelled to vote against on first reader. I don't want to rehash what we did over the last 3 or 4 years on 026. We overturned every rock to come up with a piece of legislation that was workable. It wasn't perfect, but it was workable for us as a city. To postpone it now is just trying to rehash what we've already lived through. Even many of the speakers this evening said, they're totally in support of the county's legislation, but not the moratorium. And, there's already been a commitment to revisit this and to deal with Chapter 22. That's going to come. But putting off the implementation is a public safety issue. That was the grounds on which we built the original legislation. So now to say that that doesn't matter for another year or even 6 months really means that we don't really care about the public safety issue. So I cannot, and I urge my colleagues to not take us down this road again. Let's wait and get the legislation, the ordinance that will really make a difference, and try to speak to what the community is asking of us. They like what the county has done. So we need to think closely about what the county has done and how that will fit into the scheme of our city business. But to relive, to put this off, I think it's a waste of our time and a smack in the face to everyone who worked on that previous piece of legislation.
Thank you, Alderwoman Finlayson. Yes, Alderman Savage.
I just want to reiterate, I'm not sure how else to say it, but I mean, this doesn't reverse anything that's happened. Everything that was passed is still going to go forward in terms of applications, licenses that are being reviewed, that are in the process, that need to get renewed, are still going to have to follow the public safety and all the other requirements that you passed. It doesn't pause that legislation at all. All it does is pause new permits for any short-term rental. But again, if they're in the process, if they have a permit, then they have to meet the requirements that you passed and all that hard work. I'm not looking to reverse any of that. If this does, maybe I'm misreading my own legislation, but I don't see how it does that.
The first line says a moratorium on the issuance of short-term rental licenses.
Yeah, that doesn't say it's a moratorium on. That doesn't say it's a moratorium on whatever it was, 2619. Or it doesn't say ignore what's in our code right now. All it says is no new permits. But again, everybody who has a permit or has to go for renewal is going to have to comply with the regulations that you passed.
Alderman,
Madam Mayor, if it's not a moratorium on issuing new permits, what is it a moratorium on? I mean, it does not make sense what you're saying, Rob. And it will stop all of those people who do not have a permit now who want to apply for a permit. And you heard from many of them tonight, and they're being excluded. And right now, the 2619 is the city law, the city code. There is no guarantee that there'll be any change. I don't even see any legislation for little Airbnbs and all of those sorts of things. And so who knows? It took us not 4 years, but 5 years to get to this point with 02619. Who knows how long it's going to take if we ever get to any other change. In the meantime, we pass an ordinance, we want to move forward, we want to find out who these people are, get them inspected, get them licensed for health, safety, and other reasons. But now we're just going to stop for a year and extend it when we don't get it done for another year, who knows? And you're operating on the assumption that there's this huge glut out there. How would you know that? How would you know that there's this big reserve of people that want to come in? If we go ahead and start doing the work, Director Gerald has 2 different initiatives that he's following. One is a short-term initiative to try to get some data that the Office of Law has looked at, and a longer-term RFP to go out and solicit people to go out and locate these people that are doing this business. And by the way, I think that same procurement could be used to look at people who already have accessory dwelling units. So there's a double bang for that. Don't stop that. Let's move forward. Give this legislation a chance. Give this legislation the ability to find its right level. If there are tweaks, and no one has denied that there cannot be tweaks, but why pass it and then stop it for a year? It makes no sense to me. And I can't, it does stop it. It's a moratorium. No new issuance.
Alderman Gay.
Yeah, thanks. I guess, based off of what Sally explained to us tonight, and some of the residents complained that the process and how long it takes to get the permit.
It's anecdotal.
Well, that's what they say. But I guess so in a way, the moratorium really wouldn't. I mean, it would stop new applicants from applying for the next year. But the applicants that are already in the process, I mean, it would probably take them a year to get the permit. So I mean, what is it really stopping? I don't know. I guess that's my question. Is it really have an effect if the permit process takes that long, and the inspection process takes that long? I mean, so at the end of this year, then we'll see. Oh, the 15 Airbnbs that were approved were good. I'm still lost at really what the teeth of the moratorium is.
Thank you, Alderman Gay. Alderman Arnett.
Thank you. So, again, we have like 115 licensed. If you believe the horror stories, there are 1,200 people pounding on the door to get licenses, and there's some unknown number of people that are doing this anyway. If we follow 02619, we start the process of identifying and inspecting these people, whether they're licensed now or not, and whether they can pass inspection or not. We can start putting the law into effect. We can take care of those people who want to apply, but now would be prohibited from applying. And for what reason? The things that we're doing now, whether we do a moratorium or not, are the things you say you want. Looking at the Title 21 to open that up to look at what we can do about concentration. There are other things that we need to look at in terms of zoning, and things that we will be looking at in terms of zoning, in terms of accessory dwelling units at the same time. In many ways, there's a fortunate juxtaposition of these two issues. Let's go forward and get moving on doing this legislation that we work so hard to get, and not throw this 1 year or however many years monkey wrench into things. And it does not take a year to get these things. So, I mean, that's really insulting to the staff about how long it takes to get a permit.
Alderman Savage had his hand up, and then Alderman Gay.
Thank you. Again, though, it doesn't stop the application of the law. New permits, it stops new permits, but again, existing.
Moratorium. If it doesn't do anything, you got my vote.
I've told you what it does. Existing permits, all right, existing permit holders and those that have to get reapplied, those are the ones that are going to have to comply with the regulations you already passed. They're going to have to make sure they pass the inspections. They're going to be limited in terms of only having one STR per owner in the city. They're going to have to follow all those. So to say that it somehow pauses that law, no, it doesn't pause that law. It pauses new permit applications. And again, that's to reduce the number of new applications. It's to reduce the potential grandfather we're going to face down the road.
Thank you, Alderman Savage.
And just one quick, I do want to ask that we please at least allow this discussion to happen. I mean, this would be the second time that we've stifled debate on the short-term rental legislation. The first time was when Alderman Gay and I had our amendments that we couldn't even discuss. And so this is just first reader. Vote against it if you want, but at least we can have a conversation, see if we can come to some kind of compromise and figure out a way forward.
Thank you, Alderman Savage. I'm going to preface this with Alderman Gay is next. If we don't hear any new arguments, I guess we'd be ready to vote.
Yeah.
But Alderman Gay, and then I have something to say. Go ahead.
I just have
Alderman
a
Gay.
quick question for either Sheila or Alderman Finlayson, or Alderman Arnett in regards to 02619. And, I still share concern about, although we have passed the legislation, I don't know how effective it is. We still get emails all the time about the short-term rentals popping up, and as we heard again tonight, I'll keep pointing to that, the lack of staff that we have available to, kind of go back and keep track of these. So I guess I'm just trying to find a balance here. Would the moratorium, do you believe, help assist with 02619 and allowing for the staff to get an accurate count of the short-term rentals in the city?
Alderman Arnett?
Yes, so as I mentioned, Director Gerald has had an RFP and actually before him, city manager, thank you, Sutherland. There's no way, if there are many hundreds of these groups, and if we're also going to have to get into ancillary dwelling units and the load we're already experienced and will have to experience continually with inspecting the housing authority, that we can do it with the 4 staff that are on board. We approved an additional inspector. An additional inspector in last year's budget. There is not enough staff. One of the nice things about the resources that are available to us through contract is there are people who specialize in doing this, and they can hit the ground as soon as we get the procurement in place and start doing these inspections. And so even if our staff are tawdry and reprobates and they can't do things fast enough, which I don't subscribe to, but I mean, that seems to be what's being asserted, we're hiring the contractor to do that. And this is what they do. It's the only thing they do. They're not doing all the other things that our staff do, the inspection staff, which is inspecting new construction, inspecting remodeling, all of those kinds of things. So it is a special focus, and it's a focus that will allow us to do more than one thing. It allows us to do the inspections at the housing authority, to allow us to do the inspection of short-term rentals, and allow us to do the inspection and analysis that we have yet to get to on accessory dwelling units. So and I think that this moratorium, as I read it, will stop that. We will not be able to do that, but more importantly, we won't be able to get out and inspect and license the people who are currently doing this without a license and without being inspected and are doing it illegally and have been doing it illegally. A lot of the people who have testified before us admit that they're doing it without a license and without being inspected. We need to get to the business of cleaning that up, not a moratorium.
Thank you, Alderman Arnett. One issue I'm going to bring up is the perpetual issue, and we've been compared to the county on this issue, and it's concerning committees that we have on the city council. And I had responded to someone because the question was raised, why don't we do it like the county, and why do we have committees? And my response was, we don't have staff as a council. And so therefore, we rely on our specialized standing committees to do the work, to look at issues, and people who are on these standing committees have expertise in what they do. Alderwoman Finlayson and Alderman Arnett have done a tremendous amount of work when it comes to this piece of legislation. They have, in many ways, been our staff. Thank you very much. And I believe in practicing councilmatic courtesy. They've done the legwork. I've done very little. I listen to them. I listen to our constituents, those who come before us and testify. Taking all that into consideration, I rely on the opinions, whether it's environmental matters, whether it's rules, whether it's finance. Those are the people on the standing committees that we rely on for making determinations, because in many ways because we don't have staff. So I respect Alderman Savage's attempt to bring before us a moratorium. However, in my own opinion, and this is just me speaking, that it flies in the face and I don't want to use disrespectful because that's too harsh a word, but the work that they have done over the past at least 3 years that I know of, that they've worked tremendously hard, have heard our residents. We are in the process, and I have talked to our city attorney about looking at the little Airbnbs and the legislation regarding the county. That's why I asked Dr. Margulies to give me the number again. So we're going to be doing some tweaking to that. I don't think it's going to take a whole lot of time, but I think we've got the foundation and the framework to move on to what we have now. I don't want to thwart the progress that we have made as a council. Since I've been on the council, this has been the largest and the biggest and the most impactful piece of legislation that I have seen since I've been on here. So you can take that for what it's worth. I'm up to a dime now. But anyway, that's my 10 cents worth. Thank you very much. And we're calling the question. All in favor of R 1020?
On first reader.
On first reader? Say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose? No. You take a roll call? Okay. Yeah, let's take a roll call. Let's do a roll call.
Okay. Acting Mayor Pennell Charles,
No.
Alderman Savage,
Aye.
Alderman Arnett,
No.
Alderman Payon. Alderman Finlayson,
No.
Alderman Gay.
Aye. 33.
Motion fails.
Motion failed.
It's defeated. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Yep, ties are defeated.
City Attorney? Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
There are no other items on the agenda, Madam Mayor.
Is there anything else for the good of the order? Anyone? Going once, going
For the
twice?
good of the
yes.
order, I want to let the general public please wash our hands. Take this flu stuff very seriously. As you can see, all night I've been just dealing with this, and it came out of nowhere. So please take all of these health texts that they send you very serious. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Gay. Yes, Alderman Savage has something to say.
I'd like to add to the budget some hazard pay for sitting next to
There being no other items on the agenda, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I thank Dr. Gay for his advice tonight, and
He's up to a dime, too.
I feel your pain. As long as you stay over there, I feel your pain. I would move that we adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Motion to adjourn. It is 9:53 p.m. Good night, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you.